think I tend to ISO to a smaller size than most people. Not something I've put a whole lot of thought into. But I don't mind playing the pots in position against the limpers. And I don't know. I think it makes sense to me when you're still going to be quite wide. I think it makes sense to me to use the smaller size because you're opening yourself up. Like if you are ISOing to some very large size, I've seen people use 5-6 big blinds. On 22, I'm going to bet, but I think this will mostly check. And this, I think, is just a pure check. You open yourself up to people 3-betting light behind you. This hand can bluff sometimes. On a 51, I'm going to check, but I don't know. And honestly, I don't expect this to work very often. I think this size is basically the only one that reps much of anything, and I am not aiming very high with this bet. Maybe I should just bet turn there. I do actually want to, I'm going to look right down the, so it was kings, cutoff versus big blind, where we had bet and faced a check raise. I think it was queen 4-2 two-tone, and I had said there was some 3-betting with kings facing check raise, but I want to check that again. Like I have looked at some boards in that line, but it's certainly not a spot I'm very confident. I think very easy call here versus donk. All right, sorry, hold on. I'll be back in a second. All right, I ran over my cord. Here, I'm not sure, so I'm going to barrel with the draw. And here, I think versus that size, I'm just going to keep calling. Rivering the nuts, always a good strategy. And yeah, I think just going for all of it is what makes sense here. Not that hard to find bluffs. We can have some hands like king, queen, king 10, queen 10. And also, I think it's just one of those spots where villain is going to have some jacks. Like that's the part that's less sure. He'll have not very much of the 6x. Yeah, honestly. Yeah, I think it's one of those spots where he just everything he has is a bluff catcher. Here on 25 will 3-bet. Everything he has is a bluff catcher, so I think with the nuts, you just want to go all in. Probably one where I would have two sizes though. I think you can get away with some relatively thin value bets there. So on these two high card two-tone boards, I like using a slightly bigger size. I don't use any overbets from the earlier positions, but I would go bigger when I bet. On an 82, I think this is just the stereotypical checking hand. I think pretty clear call. Nothing else to do, no reason to raise, too strong to fold. Yeah, I mean, I'm not thrilled here. I think this size makes a lot of sense with the king, but getting 3-1 with a not terrible hand, I think is. I was gonna say it is easy to, it is somewhat easy to overbluff. I was not thinking of the 4-5 offsuit. I was thinking more of the, you know, ace 10, ace 9, queen 10, queen 9. But if you're as wide as 4-5 offsuit, then it's really hard to not to overbluff. I think those are the ones that, in the, you know, in my nittier days, I would be tempted to fold because, like, he tells a convincing story, and you know, I'm kind of calling expecting to lose quite often. I certainly don't beat any value hands, and that's just not the right way to think about a hand, right? When you're getting more than 3-1, and there are many reasonable bluffs that villain can have, and some less reasonable ones as well. You just don't need to be right very often. And so you can be hurt much more by overfolding in that spot than by overcalling a little bit. Jack 8 at 100 big blinds deep, mixes in some 3-bets and some calls. I think at 50 I will probably just play the same. And this is a mixed open, 71 will call. Interesting board. I think we will start with a bet. I think we will bet again. Yeah, I mean, I think we just have to call. I think villain can have some ace jack with a spade and some ace jack and that type of hand, and random ace of spades. I mean, villain's play can never be too bad when you have the nut flush draw. It's one of those spots though where for that jam to be good, like I need to have hands that are kind of value betting and folding. I don't know. I think with that one in particular, I would just see bet or check raise to flop. But I mean, whatever. You have the ace of spades. It can't be that bad. Well, this is a weird one. I guess since villain can't re-raise, I mean, we have to call $1 to win 12. I don't know. maybe even 10-3 off is too bad, but weird situation. I'm kind of inclined to not believe this, but I think with threes we just fold. And I don't think we get to bluff, despite having very close to the nut low. Yeah, I mean, there's no pot to win. So fold. And here 8-7 off is a mix for me. I'm not sure about this one. Again, a type of board that I think it's easy to pure c-bet, but is not a pure c-bet in GTA Wizard. Very clear call once we check. And I think very clear over check. Yeah, I don't think betting accomplishes a whole lot. Tough spot if he bets. Yeah. Here, I think we can just fold. I should have considered check raise as well. I think check raise makes a, well, I feel like, I don't know. With his sizing, he's repping some kind of, weak ace that bet the flop and check the turn, or maybe a king. Here, I'm just going to keep betting. Could use an overbet as well, but I think aces in particular does not really want to overbet. we block a lot of the calls, but I think almost no matter what size we use, we are pretty much just getting called by an ace. So yeah, even though I expect him to fold a lot when we have particularly ace-ace, I still think big is the size that makes sense. I think three-way, I don't think we use any huge sizings on the turn. On some rivers, we will use larger sizes. This one's a mix for me. Not a particularly high c-bet board. On the ace, kind of medium two-tone. And on a 92, we're going to check. Here, I'm inclined to just bet our hand. I think another board where it's just super easy to over c-bet, especially compared to solver. This one is a mix. 123 was 23 when I first looked anyways. We'll open. Very clear. Continue with our hand. I don't think I want to raise it particularly often. I think that turn is bad enough that we just fold. I'd be much more inclined to raise a hand like king queen there than ace queen. But you know, probably still fine sometimes. Pretty low c-bet frequency board. My hand obviously can bet. On a 100, we will check back again. I think hearts here are kind of nice. So I think I'm going to click the call button. We block some of his stronger queen X. Oh, that's a good hand. We block some of his stronger queen X, and his hearts, like his bluffs that get to the river are less likely to have a heart, because I think his heart hands mostly just bet the turn. On 42, this one I mix, so we will 3-bet this one. Here I'm still just checking range, and I think 2 is mostly just going to check fold. And then this, I don't think this is necessarily a solver-proof play, but I think it's a pretty decent way to realize our equity. Just go for the small bet, expect to get some folds, get some calls from better hands, and probably just go check river and lose, but also get some calls from hands like ace, queen, ace, jack that'll check down, and just avoid getting bluffed off on the turn, basically. Again, I don't think it's necessarily solver-proof, but I think in practice, fairly effective. Worst aces, I just fold. Been a bit of a quiet stream so far. Feels like there haven't been too many exciting hands. So yeah, if you guys have any questions for me, feel free to ask in the chat. For those of you who don't know me well, I've been streaming once a month on here for the last little while, but I'm also a Run It Once coach. You can check out my videos over there. And yeah, I've been playing for BrPC since November of 2020, I guess. And currently playing mostly, well, a mix of 200 zone and then some 200 regular tables and 500 regular tables on Bodog. Had a swingy experience thus far at 500, but yeah, always fun to try a new stake. I would say my initial impressions from 500 are that there are just as many whales and weaker players, but it does feel anyways like the regs are better, more aggressive, put you in more tough spots for sure. OTB Black Baron says, if worth it more to play 2 tables 200 zone versus 4 tables reg, if you have 5 big blinds on zone and 10 big blinds on reg tables, probably close call, because you play so many more hands. If 5 big blind possible over a very large sample, pool is soft, but no info at all on players. Okay, so, well, the first part's a math question, right? So from what I have seen, I think in my sample, like when I play 2 zone, 2 regular, roughly a quarter of my hands end up being from regular tables. So that means for every 100 regular table hands I play 300 zone hands. So if you are choosing between 200 zone and 200 regular tables, and those are your win rates, I think by my back of the envelope math, you are better off playing 2 tables of 200 zone. Now, the problem with that math is, well, one, you're going to have probably significantly more variance at the zone tables as well, because in general, you know, part of them being your win rate being lower is that you don't run into nearly as many huge whales. But yeah, so I think you are better off money-wise playing the zone. At the same time, you know, you could add regular tables on other sites as well, and maybe now you get up to 6, 7, 8 regular tables and kind of even out that hand distribution. There's also the issue of 500 regular tables on Bodog are pretty good, from what I've seen, although, you know, time dependent. I have no experience with 500 zone, but just from looking at the lobby, it doesn't seem to run all the time. And so while that math might work quite well at 200, as you start to move up, it might not make sense. As far as whether 5 big blinds is attainable, I think it is. Yeah, I think lifetime, I am currently in the middle of my worst downswing at, halfway out. Anyways, I had my worst downswing at 200 zone and recovered and then started a new one. But let's see, what have I played? I think last time I checked my win rate, I have not played a ton of hands. Yeah, I have 100k hands at 6 big blinds per 100. I have heard of people with many more hands winning at 10 big blinds per 100. I don't know how recent that was though. 74 we'll call it. It's 3-betting some. Definitely, I do think, you know, the games are getting tougher over time. So yeah, whether you actually can win 5 big blinds on zone, I'm not 100% sure. But you can definitely come close, at least. So very high frequency check back on the flop with our range. And so we're still quite protected on this turn. And so I think versus this size, 8s is still just going to be a fold. But yeah, with your math here, basically, from what I've seen, for one zone table, you get 3 times the hands you'd get on one regular table per hour. Pretty low frequency c-bet board in theory, but facing the short stack, I think I've said this on here before, I typically just err on the side of betting too often versus likely weaker players. And then we will barrel the turn. You know, I often think about those spots and how, like, so for those of you who don't, I've played poker since 2004 online, and No Limit, I started playing No Limit maybe more like in 2008, 2009, playing cash. I used to play tournaments as well. But like, you used to look for the guys who were the maniacs who just bet all the time. And yet nowadays it kind of feels like it's hard to defend against the just bet jam. And you know, we spend so much time working on our defense versus c-bet and defense versus turn barrel. And yeah, you know, the smart maniac is a pretty good strategy, turns out. This is, yeah, probably just a pure check. Actually, one of my favorite stories from way back when is you know, when you're able to look back and see how dumb you were a long time ago. So I used to play Limit Hold'em, and I had moved up pretty steadily, and I started taking some shots and mix here. I started taking some shots they had a 75-150 game, and there were these two guys. One was named K-Town D, and I can't remember the other guy's name, Malp or something. And they would both always sit with like some absurd amount of money, like, you know, 6 figures on the table, even though it's Limit Hold'em, so you can't really use any of it. And they, to me, just seemed like the biggest fish. You know, they played like 50-30 or something. And, you know, at that time, I knew that 50-30, that's fish stats. And then you look back, and it's like, first of all, Limit Hold'em as played then was a joke. Limit Hold'em now, people are crazy. And it turns out that's just the right way to play Limit Hold'em. And also, we were mostly playing 3- and 4-handed. So it turned out that I was very much the fish in that game. But yeah, it's funny how you have these preconceived notions, and it's hard in the moment to get past that. You know, like I didn't play those games enough to lose like a super large amount of money, but I definitely was a loser in that game over what I played, and it's not easy. You can see why people keep playing in games that they are not winners in, and are able to convince themselves that they are beating stakes that they are not. But this would have been back in 2006, something like that. For those of you curious, that guy had Ace-7 offsuit. Maybe I can consider blocking river, actually. Too much in story mode. It's always funny thinking back to poker in those days, because I literally started by reading Lee Jones' Low Limit Hold'em, I think was the name of it. And so you read one book, and you have one friend or a couple of friends who play. And right away I was making more, you know, playing one table of 50 cent a dollar Limit Hold'em than I was at my co-op jobs in university. So weird stack sizes here. I'm not great in these situations. I am inclined to just call my hand. I think 3-bet call feels gross. 3-bet fold feels impossible at these stacks, and so I think just call with this hand seems reasonable. Yeah, and this is actually kind of a gross spot. Large bet size, and you know, a stack that can quite easily jam behind. I think with no backdoor, well, I think I'm going to fold just based on running out of time. I'm not sure about that one. With backdoor flush draw, I don't think there's anything to do but continue. Without, yeah, I really don't know. We'll see. I'll see if anything happened there. It looks like he folded. Very clear call of the 3-bet here. And we will mostly float, occasionally raise, depending on sizing. Yeah, I think mostly float, occasionally raise makes sense. And here on that roll, we will go ahead and bet. Yeah, I think our hand is just a very good candidate to bet fold. We block some clear continues and we block some raises, but have very little equity against any kind of reasonable hand.